Tato, welcome back to Unlearning to Learn with Tato. It's been a minute. It has been a minute. I've been gone for a while, but I'm back now and I am back with the heat. I'm back with the heat. So I'm very excited for today's topic. Super excited. So today we're going to be talking about all things boundaries. All things boundaries, setting boundaries, the importance of boundaries, why we should have boundaries, and everything that is associated with boundaries. First and foremost, what are boundaries? Let's start there. Like, what are boundaries? I think in simple terms, I think boundaries are just measures that you put in place to keep yourself safe and healthy, to keep yourself safe emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And boundaries are just a form of self-love. Boundaries are just a form of because no one is going to look out for you except for you. So you setting boundaries and standing by them, like standing your ground and maintaining your boundaries, like telling yourself that I can't tolerate this, I won't allow when a person speaks to me this way, or I won't allow myself to be in this uncomfortable situation. That just shows that you love yourself and you respect yourself, because when you don't set boundaries, you just allow anything and everything, and in that process you don't love yourself, you don't respect yourself. So setting boundaries is definitely a form of self-love. Tell yourself that this is where I draw the line, I can't take this. It just shows how much you love yourself. And setting boundaries also just shows how connected you are with your inner self. Because if you're not connected with your inner self, you won't have that alert that this is not good and I can't allow this. So when you are disconnected from your inner self, from the real you, you won't have a voice or something that alerts you that we can't take this, this is not it, this is hurting our mental health. So when you are able to like set boundaries and stand by them and like maintain them, it just shows how connected you are to your inner self. So I feel like it starts by you being connected to your inner self, and in that way you're able to like set boundaries. Not that it will be easy, but because you're connected to your inner self and you love yourself to that point, you're gonna be able to like respect yourself and give yourself the decency to be like, I can't tolerate this, I'm not gonna allow this, I'm setting this boundary, this is my limit, you can't cross this line. So setting boundaries is very important, very crucial, very critical. And not setting boundaries usually is associated with people pleasing. I, for one, have experience with that. Like, I'm a very understanding person. I'm a very like caring person. I like accommodating other people's feelings. So before, I'm still navigating this whole like setting boundaries thing. I still struggle a lot. I still struggle sometimes, but it's not as bad as like back then. I used to be a people pleaser. Like, I used to be that person who, even if someone like did me wrong and they crossed the line, and I would be like, no, I can't set the boundary. Like, what if I'm overreacting? How are they gonna feel? I would want to please everyone. I'd want everyone to like me. I'd want everyone to be happy with me, and that's just impossible. Not everyone is not gonna like you. So rather just set the boundaries. So not setting boundaries is usually associated with people pleasing, and that's not a good thing, because you neglect your own needs. You actually like literally neglect yourself just so you can please people, just so people can like you. So already that just shows that you don't love yourself, you're not connected with yourself, because you're trying to please everyone while hurting yourself, while neglecting yourself, because people are going to keep doing things that you are uncomfortable with, and you're just going to keep like tolerating it. And at the end of the day, you're the one who's crying, you're the one who's getting hurt, you're the one who has to do all the healing. So it's, if you you're a person who can't set boundaries, you're most likely a people pleaser, and mm, that's very that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous. And like setting boundaries is very, very uncomfortable. Like, even if like you're connected to your inner self and you love yourself, it's a very uncomfortable thing, more especially if you, for a very long time, you were a people pleaser. It's not easy setting boundaries. Or sometimes you set boundaries but you don't stick by them, like you don't stand by them. You're like, sometimes it's just like, let me just allow this person to like cross this line for just this once, and it becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. That's why I'm saying setting boundaries is very, very uncomfortable. It's not a nice thing. I mean, having to go to someone and communicate that you don't like this, more especially because people are gonna question you. Why are you feeling that way? Why are you setting that boundary? Like, why, like, people want you to explain yourself, and let me tell you something, you don't have to explain yourself. If you feel uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable. You don't have to like go to people, be explaining yourself that the reason you're setting this boundary is because of, you don't, just set your boundaries and maintain them. You don't owe anybody any explanation. And honestly, you can't have healthy relationships without boundaries, be it romantic relationships, friendships, family, relationships. You can't have, because the problem with not setting boundaries, right? People are not perfect, and people are gonna keep doing things that you don't like, that you're not comfortable with, and you're just gonna keep quiet. And because you're not communicating to those people, they're gonna keep doing those things unknowingly, and the dangerous thing with that is that you're gonna start resenting them, and you're gonna also resent yourself for not being able to like stand for yourself, stand your ground. And setting boundaries with family, that's just a topic on its own. That's like a topic one other day. Setting boundaries with family is very, very different with like setting boundaries with like your partner or your friends. It's very tricky. It's very tricky, more especially because we were not taught how to set boundaries or the importance of setting boundaries growing up. Sorry, excuse me. So setting boundaries with your family, it's very tricky, because the moment you start standing up for yourself or having your own voice, you are labeled as disrespectful. And with black families, as a child, you are expected to just allow everything, just accept everything. You can't speak your mind, you can't set boundaries, you can't set like you just have to take everything in. And it can be like small things like you're not feeling okay, you just want to be alone in your room, and you want to set a boundary with your family that you don't want to talk to anyone on that day, or you don't want anyone in your room. Trust me, your black family, they're going to take it personal. They're going to start calling your grandma and your aunts and telling them that you are being this way. And so it's very tricky setting boundaries with family. One thing I can say is that in as much as you set boundaries with family, you should set it in a respectful way. I mean, you can still set boundaries and be respectful. It doesn't necessarily mean now when you start like finding your voice and having your own voice, you have to be you have to come across as rude or harsh. You know, you can still set your boundaries and be respectful. Usually most of the time, if you're like communicating with your family in a respectful manner, they're able to like listen and understand you. But it's, you know, that's what I'm saying, it's very tricky. I mean, you can still be respectful and they still don't get it. So setting boundaries with family, that's just a conversation on its own. That's just, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And you know, talking about, you know, coming across as harsh or being rude, I think we need to unlearn the idea that setting boundaries or saying no to certain things or not allowing certain things is selfish or it's rude. You know, when you start setting boundaries, it's gonna show you who loves you and who respects you, because the moment you start setting boundaries, people who used to have access to you or who used to control you, they're gonna start gaslighting you and telling you things like you're being selfish and you're being rude, you're being unnecessary, why are you setting that boundary? That's why I'm saying we need to unlearn the idea that setting boundaries or saying no to certain things is selfish. It's actually not selfish. That is selfless. It's, as I said in the beginning, it's a form of self-love. So setting boundaries is very crucial, and it's just gonna show you who loves you, because the people who love you, they want to see you being healthy emotionally, mentally. So therefore they're going to respect your boundaries and they're not going to question why you're setting certain boundaries. And again, you don't owe anyone any explanation. You don't need to explain yourself or explain why you're setting a certain boundary, you know. So setting boundaries is, it's very uncomfortable. It's very like you're it's very uncomfortable, but unfortunately it needs to be done for your own sake, because setting boundaries is a way of keeping yourself emotionally and mentally healthy, because you cannot be emotionally mentally healthy if you don't set boundaries. It's just, it's impossible, because when you're not setting boundaries, you're just allowing everything in, and it's just crowding. It's gonna affect your mental health. So think of setting boundaries as a way of um keeping yourself in check, like keeping yourself emotionally and mentally healthy, you know. Because when you filter things, like when you set boundaries, you're filtering, like you're choosing what you allow. You're just choosing, and in that way you're able to like keep your mental health in check. Like you're able to be healthy, you know, emotionally, mentally. And yeah, like I have a lot to say about setting boundaries, but I don't want this segment or this episode to be long. So by closing, in conclusion, I'm gonna read a quote that says, walls keep everybody out, boundaries teach people where the door is. And this quote is by Mark Grooves. And I mean, I feel like I don't need to explain this quote. It just speaks volume. Like, and in addition to this quote, when we're saying set boundaries, we're not saying now you have to be like keep everybody out and, you know, put walls and not be accessible and just be alone. No, it's not about that. There's a healthy way of setting boundaries, and that's also a conversation for another day, you know. The conversation about setting boundaries, it's very broad. It's very broad, and I have a lot to say about it, but I think I'm just going to end here, you know. And again, there's a healthy way of setting boundaries, and there are healthy boundaries that you can set. And setting boundaries doesn't necessarily mean now you have to be, you know, be rude and keep everybody out. No, it's just a way of respecting yourself and respecting other people, loving yourself, you know, and filtering things that come in, things that you can allow. And I feel like setting boundaries is very crucial. It's something that you can control, and since it's something that it's in your power, try as much as you can to set boundaries and stick by them, especially especially in the world that we live in, where people feel entitled. You're very important to set boundaries. Very, very important to set boundaries. But and we need to unlearn the whole idea of setting boundaries is selfish, and you know questioning people on why they're setting boundaries, and why we should respect their boundaries. Let's stop doing that. Honestly, guys, let us just stop doing that, and let's respect people's boundaries. If you love someone and you consider them someone close to your heart, you're gonna respect their boundaries. So yeah, that's it for today's segment, today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. You know what's up, you know the vibes. Until next time, bye.